Hello my dear friends, I am Danya Divakar. Once again welcome back to my channel Shades of Literature. A big thanks to all for supporting me and subscribing my channel. So to begin with today's session, I am going to do the narrative techniques. So before that, in the last video, I already discussed the summary or the plot of the novel Palace of Illusions. So in today's video, I will be doing the narrative techniques. So before going into the narrative techniques, let me put forth a few things before you. The first thing is that why do we all read books or a particular author? We all tend to read like some people like to read fantasy fiction, some people like to read romantic fictions, some others are more having a liking towards science fictions. Why do we choose certain streams? It's mainly because we like the narrative style or the strategy the author has used in that particular book. That is what attracts to us towards that particular work. So similarly, Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni has also used various narrative techniques in her work The Palace of Illusions. So few techniques which she has used in her novel, they are: first one is magic realism, second one is flashback technique, third one is fantasy, fourth one is myth, fifth is story within a story, and sixth one is mystery. So all these techniques Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni has used in her novel The Palace of Illusions, and I will be explaining each and every technique and where or in which all instances these techniques are working in the novel. So now coming to the first narrative strategy, that is magic realism, that Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni has used in her work The Palace of Illusions. So the term magic realism was coined by Franz Rowe in 1920. And what is magic realism? It simply blurs the gap between reality and magic. Or in other words, it is an amalgamation of reality and magic. Or in yet another words, it brings together the ordinary and the extraordinary. And now, how does the author use this magic realism in their work? It's very simple. The author will place the character or a particular instance in a very realistic portrait. After that, as the plot progresses or as the storyline progresses, what happens? This person or this character or this instance, they will be exposed to a magical element. That is how writers use magic realism in their piece of work. Now coming to the magical instances that the author has used in her work. The first instance would be Panchaali's birth. Panchaali was born from the holy fire. Draupadi was conducting a yajna, and from the very holy fire, the first person to step out was Drishtadyumna, Panchaali's brother, and soon after Drishtadyumna, the second person was Panchaali. So the people surrounded over there, they were not expecting a second person to come out from the fire, but Panchaali steps out. So what is the magical element in it? The very birth of Panchaali from the holy fire, that serves to be the magical element. And the realistic element would be the people over there did not accept or did not give that much importance to Panchaali's birth. That could be the realistic element. Now coming to the second point, astral voices. As soon as Panchaali was born, the astral voice or the heavenly voice said that we are giving you a gift. Take good care of her. She will change the future in due course. This was the astral voice. So people over there were not used to these kind of astral voices or heavenly voices. So as soon as the astral voice was there, they all got perplexed. Okay, this lady is going to change the future or the history. That's what the astral voice said. So the very astral voice has lots of magic in it. And this astral voice or this heavenly voice decides the destiny of Panchaali till the end of the novel. Now coming to Vyasa's warnings. Vyasa had given Panchaali 3 warnings to hold back her question. That was the first warning. The second one was to hold back her laughter. And the third one was to hold back her curse. These were the 3 warnings given by Vyasa to Panchaali. Panchaali, she knew that she had to perform all these 3 warnings, or she had to follow these 3 warnings given by Vyasa. But fate or destiny, it just holds her back from that. She ends up in doing all these 3 warnings. As the plot progresses, we can see that as the novel progresses, we can see that Panchaali is doing whatever was asked by Vyasa to her not to do. She is doing all the 3 things, and that decides the destiny of Panchaali. So, what is the magical element in it? Vyasa had already warned her. That is the magical element in it. But in reality, even though she knew that she had to follow the warnings given by Vyasa, she was not able to follow that. That is a realistic element portrayed in the novel. Now coming to the 4th point, prophecy by the spirits of Panchaali's future. The spirits had already warned Panchaali in her sleep that she'll marry 5 heroes and she'll be the queen of queens. She'll own a huge palace, and then whoever loves her, she'll not recognize her true love. She'll be loved by everyone, but she'll not recognize who loves her the most. All these things were warned by the spirits. They also warned her that she'll be the catalyst for the Kurukshetra war, and before Pandavas, she'll be the first one to fall. And at certain period in her life, she'll have to live as a maid. So all these things were prophesied by the spirits. So what is the magical element in it? Panchaali knows that okay, these things will be happening in her life in due course, but even then she doesn't want to remember the negative things, whichever negative things the spirits had warned her of. She doesn't want to contemplate further on that. She just like to contemplate that okay, I'll be marrying 5 great people or 5 great heroes. I'll be owning a huge palace, and I'll be living over there as a queen. That is the realistic element which the author is portraying before us. And the magical element is that the very prophecy itself is magical. Somebody is telling you your future in your sleep, and the same thing happening in your life, that is very much magical. So this is the magical and the realistic element portrayed by Divakaruni in this point. Now coming to the 5th one, story of Shikhandi. So who is Shikhandi? We all know that Shikhandi is the rebirth of Amba. Now who is Amba? Amba is the daughter of King of Kashi. Amba, Ambiga and Ambaliga. They 3 are the daughters of King of Kashi. Now Bheeshma abducts the 3 daughters of King of Kashi, that is Amba, Ambiga and Ambaliga, and presents them to the then crowned prince of Hastinpur, that is Vichitravirya. But what happens is that Amba was already in love with some other person, the king of Salya. Amba was in love with the king of Salya, and the other 2 daughters, they gets married to Vichitravirya. But Amba, since she was loving some other person, Bheeshma returns Amba to Salya. But what Salya does is he tells that okay, I'm not going to take this lady as my wife because she is already abducted by somebody else. So I will not take this lady as my wife. So now Amba is like, she is not having anybody else to take care of her. She just can't go back to her father also. And now she just roams around, and she also asks Bheeshma, can you marry me? But Bheeshma had a vow that he will be a celibate. Okay, he will not marry. He had already vowed that he will never marry in his lifetime. So that vow was there, and he told that I cannot marry you. So Amba was refused by Bheeshma also. So she was left alone in her life. She didn't have any other clause. So now she had to take her revenge. She just, because her life was spoiled by Bheeshma. So what she does is she prays Lord Kartikeya. Lord Kartikeya appears before her and tells her that you will be the catalyst for the death of Bheeshma in your next life, and presents her with a garland. Whoever wears this garland will be the reason for Bheeshma's death. Now Amba wanders around searching for a person to whom she can hand over this garland. She couldn't find a person, the correct person, and she commits suicide. Now Amba, in her next life, she is born to King Draupadi. She takes her rebirth as Shikhandi to King Draupadi's King Draupadi's daughter. Now what happens is Shikhandi finds out this garland, she wears it on her neck, and later on she turns as a catalyst for the death of Bheeshma. That's how the story goes. This story is narrated by Divakaruni in the novel Palace of Illusion. So this is a story of Shikhandi. So what is the magical element in this story? The magical element is nothing but the very garland, the rebirth of Amba as Shikhandi. All these serves as the magical element. Now what is the realistic element portrayed by Divakaruni? The realistic element is that Shikhandi resembles the present day women who can just stand on their feet, who fights for their existence. So that is a realistic element which Divakaruni tries to bring before us. And in this novel, in this section, Story of Shikhandi, there are two other more techniques which Divakaruni employs. The first one is that flashback technique. Divakaruni is taking us back to the story of Shikhandi, where she is narrating the whole story of Amba and her two other sisters, how they got married to Vichitravirya. The whole story is told to us in detail. So flashback technique is also employed here. Hope you remember that flashback technique was one of the techniques, one of the narrative strategy used by Divakaruni in the novel. So that is also happening here. At the same time, the element of fantasy is also there. She is taking us to the world of fantasy, like getting boon from Lord Kartikeya, how she wears the garland and she turns as a catalyst to Bheeshma's death. So all these things are narrated to us, and there comes the element of fantasy also. Now coming to the sixth point, Krishna and Panchaali. Krishna and Panchaali's relationship is really magical. Divakaruni has portrayed in a wonderful way. Ever since Panchaali's birth, she has heard stories about Krishna, how Krishna helped the Pandavas, how at the time of need, from nowhere he just appears and helps people. So all these magical stories Panchaali has heard, and Krishna is more like a mentor, a brother and a god-like figure for Panchaali. Rather than an elderly person, he is the one who guides her at difficult times. So that is the sort of relationship which Krishna and Panchaali shares. And we all know that Panchaali, when she was disrobed and humiliated at Indraprastha, at the very palace, the first one to come and help her when all her beloved ones couldn't do a single thing to protect her, the first one to help her was Krishna. And she always asks him a question, are you truly divine? That's a question which she asks Krishna. And as the novel progresses, and when Panchaali falls at the time of their Mahaprasthan to her liberation, when she was about to attain her liberation, she was the first one to fall. And it's there in the novel. Divakaruni has clearly said that she gets a hallucinated feeling that she is holding the hand of Krishna, and as and when her hand slips off, her life or the last breath, she just breathes her last breath, and that's how she enters into heaven, or she joins hands with Karna later on in heaven. So there are lots of magical elements in the relationship between Krishna and Panchaali. And the realistic element is that Panchaali, though she knows that Krishna has some magical element, she is not ready to believe that. She always takes Krishna as her guide, or someone who can someone like a brother who can take care of her. That's the kind of image which she gives to Krishna. So she is very much realistic when it comes to Krishna. Now coming to the seventh point, title of the novel. So as I told you, the name of the novel is The Palace of Illusions. The very title itself is highly magical. There is a term illusions in the title. The whole palace, as I told you in the first video or in the first session, the palace was highly magical. The palace had moving walls, watery floors. So it was highly magical, and the very palace was built by Maya. And who's Maya? I had already mentioned. Maya is the architect of asuras and demons. The palace was built by Maya, and the very palace had lots of magical qualities in it. That's why, and the very palace is the reason for the Kurukshetra war also. When Duryodhana along with other Kauravas comes to see Indraprastha, when he enters the palace, he flounders over the floor, thinking it as a floor. actually there was water over there, and he steps into the water. He gets wet, and when Panchaali sees this, she laughs along with other maids, and Duryodhana gets offended, and later on he takes revenge upon her and humiliates her in the very court of Indraprastha. So this is the main reason for Kurukshetra war. Palace has lots of magical elements in it, and the realistic element is that Panchaali's love for the palace, she from her birth itself, after she was born, she had heard prophecies that she'll be going as a queen and she'll be living in the world's most wonderful palace. So these things she always wants to contemplate. She always contemplates on these prophecies or warnings given by great sages. So that's a realistic element. She knows that, okay, this palace, I'm going to live here and this will be my own. So that realistic element is also portrayed by Divakaruni. So that is the explanation which I can give you for the title of the novel, Palace of Illusions. Now coming to the 8th point, sorceress. So before getting married to Pandavas, in the very palace of Draupadi, Panchaali, she got training to live in unqueenly circumstances. She was already a queen. She was the daughter of King Draupadi, so she was living in a huge palace over there. She had everything, but as per the prophecies and warnings, later on in her life, it was prophesied that she will have to undergo turmoil or hardships. So in order to live such a life, sorcerers came to Draupadi's palace and they gave her training how to live in unqueenly situations. For example, like how to sleep on the floor, how to cook sober kind of food, not like delicious food with proper kind of masala, salt and all. So those kinds of things were taught to Panchaali by the sorcerer. So that is a highly magical element, and the realistic element in it is that she was taught to live in hard situations also, and she really learned it from them. She was very grateful to them. She learned all those things taught by the sorcerers. So that is the 8th point. Now once again, coming back to the narrative techniques, we already discussed the 4 points which I have ticked here. The first one is magic realism, flashback technique, fantasy and story within a story. All these 4 points are already discussed. Magic realism, I explained in detail how it is scattered throughout the novel and the instances where you can relate magic realism to. That has been dealt in detail. Now coming to flashback technique, fantasy and story within a story, it happens in the story of Shikhandi. That too I explained in detail. Now coming to the 4th point, myth. So now what is myth? Myths relate to the traditions and cultures, to our traditions and cultures. There are lots of mythical elements in this novel. The first one is that Panchaali praying to Lord Shiva for granting her a wish. So out of seeing Shiva for the first time, she gets perplexed, or she gets like buoyant. Okay, I'm seeing Lord for the first time, and she was perplexed, and she repeats her wish 5 times. So when she repeats the wish 5 times, Shiva says that you will be getting everything in your life in 5 numbers. So that's how she gets married to 5 brothers, 5 Pandava brothers. So that was the first mythical element portrayed by Divakaruni in the novel. Now coming to the birth of Pandavas, that's the second instance. We all know that Kunti was given a boon by Rishi Durvasa. She was given, Kunti served Rishi in a well-mannered way, and the Rishi was very happy with Kunti, and he gives Kunti 5 boons. She can use it, and she uses the first boon out of curiosity. She uses it before her marriage, and that's how Karna is born. And later on she invokes gods and she gets children from those gods. That's how Pandava's birth takes place. And she loans the boon, one of her boon, to Madri also. That's how Nakul and Sahadev is born. So that is the magical or the mythical element in Divakaruni's novel. Now coming to the birth of Kauravas, Gandhari, she gets pregnant, and for a long time she was not delivering the baby. So later on she understands and she was just fed up with this. For Kundi already has 5 children and now Gandhari was not even having a single one. Her body refuses to go into labor, and what she does is she just takes a huge stick and she beats on her stomach, and she bleeds and gives birth to a piece of flesh. Then later on a sage comes there, and the sage cuts this piece of flesh into different pieces, into 101 pieces, and puts it in a vat. Vat is a huge vessel. He puts it inside the vat, and later on that's how the Kauravas are born. For 1 year or so it's kept inside that, and later on the Kauravas are born in that manner. So that is highly mystery. The element of mystery is also there in it. It's very much mysterious how Kauravas were born from a single piece of flesh. So mysterious element is also there. So the point of myth as well as the point of mystery serves good there. So these are the major narrative techniques employed by the author, by Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni in her novel The Palace of Illusions. So now we already discussed the major narrative techniques used by Divakaruni, and now coming to the major themes employed by the author in her novel. The first one is vengeance. Vengeance, hatred. So we know that the theme of vengeance is throughout there in the novel. The very war of Kurukshetra happens out of vengeance. Panchaali had lots of hatred towards Kaurava. She was humiliated in the palace, and that hatred turns out to a collateral war which happens later on. So vengeance, the theme of vengeance serves good there. Also Shikhandi is vengeance. Shikhandi is also reciprocating whatever was there in her earlier life. She just reciprocates, carries that out and into her next life, and she turns as a catalyst for Bheeshma's death. So it's just reciprocated from her earlier life to the new. Whatever was there, whatever vengeance was there earlier, it just comes back to her in her next life. So vengeance, the theme of vengeance is explained there. Now coming to the theme of displacement and alienation. Panchaali, from her very birth itself she felt that displacement. When she was born, she was not welcomed like how Drishtadyumna was welcomed by others, by the people over there. She was not welcomed, or that warmth was not felt by her. She felt that displaced feeling then and there at her very birth itself. Now coming to the second point where she felt that displacement is that when Pandavas marries her and brings her to Kundi. Kundi says that okay Arjun, you have bought a lady. She not even looking at Panchaali, she says that whatever you have bought, you share it amongst with your brothers. So later on when Kunti sees that okay it's Panchaali, only then she notices whom Arjuna had bought with him, that's the woman, that's the very person whom Arjuna has married. So then there also she feels that displaced kind of feeling. She feels that okay, I am just split into several portions and I am served to 5 people. That kind of feeling comes to her. So she feels a displaced kind of alienated kind of feeling there. Now the third point is when Panchaali feels that when Pandavas marry other women, she feels a displaced kind of feeling. She feels alienated. She had lots of love for Pandavas. She wanted Pandavas to keep only herself as their wife. She didn't wanted them to marry other women. But whenever they married other women, she felt that alienated kind of feeling. So that is how the theme of displacement works out in the novel. Now coming to the third point, feministic ideas. As I told you earlier itself, the whole novel is portrayed before us from the perspective of Panchaali. The novel just gathers the plot around itself from the birth of Panchaali to the death of Panchaali. That's the major incidents which whatever happens in between, all those incidents are portrayed to us from the perspective of Panchaali. So the feministic ideas can be seen through and throughout the novel. Panchaali is not the person whom we see in Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, Panchaali is portrayed as Kritya. Kritya means demon, a person who can create damage, or a person who can be the cause for collateral damage. That kind of person is known as Kritya. So Panchaali is known or portrayed to us as Kritya. But in Divakaruni's novel Palace of Illusion, Panchaali is a headstrong, stubborn girl who can stand for herself and who can fight for herself. She lives her life out and she makes it sure that she is happy. She wanted whatever she wanted, she could get it from people. So even though prophecies, warnings, everything, all, she was the catalyst for Kurukshetra war, all these things happens, but still then she lived her life. And later on, after death, she joins hands with Karna. So there are lots of negative things also happening in Panchaali's life, but whatever it is, the whole novel, it's a growth of a lady called Panchaali that's being portrayed in Divakaruni's novel, and the novel can be very well told, very well considered as a Bildungsroman. It portrays the growth of a person from the birth to the end. So the novel can be clubbed under the category of a Bildungsroman. So these are the major themes which I can pinpoint from the novel. So I think the video has served good to all of you. It was very, I think I've made it clear regarding all the points. Hope you all enjoyed this session. So kindly support me, subscribe my channel. Please put in your valuable comments in the comment box. Don't forget to ping on the bell icon. Thank you.